let's talk a little bit about the 4 pillars of outfit building. And if you haven't listened to the podcast episode, I go into more depth. And I also have some reference images in the show notes, which can be helpful. But let's talk about how to use them and how I've started to use them, and when you pivot and when you're kind of building your chair. So I like to think of this as, okay, a chair needs 4 legs, right? And in order to stand up, they all kind of need to be built out and balanced and all support the weight. The aesthetic value of the chair is up to you. Do you want a Victorian tufted chair or do you want a farmhouse chair? It still has the same 4 legs. And what I'm getting at is there are 4 pillars to an outfit, and they all need to be in balance and aligned with your style preferences and your ideal style goals to function properly. So the 4 legs or pillars are clothing lines, clothing shapes, clothing colors, and clothing details or finishes. Now, when you think about this, you may be building out these legs slowly. And sometimes you start a leg and you think you're going in the right way, but you need to totally rebuild it. And sometimes you're going into your outfits and you're thinking, why does this outfit not look quite right? So the goal of doing this is to treat them as independent entities. Because when you look at your daily outfit photos and you're like, why is this off? You can have something to refer back to. So the goal is to take a collection of your daily outfit photos and kind of separate that recent ones within the past year at least. Don't go too far back, and separate them out into your yeses, your meh outfits, and then kind of like the losers or the ones that you didn't really love. And from there, we're going to try to start to see some trends. So what are the style lines? So for my style lines, when you look at some of my favorite outfits, and style lines are the outlines of the garment. So if I asked you to draw this garment, what type of lines would you be making? Would you be making short, quick, flouncy lines, or would you be doing big Sharpie marker lines? We're not focusing on inside the garment, just the outside silhouette. So a lot of my style lines are straight, some restrained curve. They are medium weight, typically, nothing too light, nothing too heavy. And so those are my lines. Now you can refer to something like your Kibbe body type or your Essence system or whatever one you like to gather some data on this. But when you put it actually into your pillars, I would prefer you to write it out in your own words. And if you just want a basic framework, I have a super simple worksheet in the show notes. But then we move on to shapes. And again, as long as we're seeing common trends, we don't have to worry about if we're getting the technical names right. So you can see I have some reference shapes here, but don't overly worry if you're like, is that a bell shape in my outfit or is that an hourglass shape in my outfit? As long as you're seeing the consistency within those elements, it'll all tie back together, because this isn't for anyone else but for you. So with my shapes, I lean rectangular, triangle, both inverted and regular triangle, and some hourglass. Again, this doesn't mean I have an hourglass figure. That's just some of my shapes in my clothing go like that. And so then when we're looking at outfits that aren't working, we're going to kind of vet them against these parameters that we've developed for each of the 4 pillars. Now, next we have color. And you may see me in this really bright, warm color that, whether you like it or not, is definitely a departure from what I've worn in the past. Now, for me personally, color was always my weakest leg. I kept thinking, like, maybe I just have a stool because I'm not having that aha moment. I recently completed Sci Art training, and we determined myself to be a bright spring, which is pretty much the first color group I had nixed. So we can get into that in a separate video, but I'm rebuilding this leg. And I am not doing it quickly because I have to evolve my pattern thinking and how I build outfits in relation to color. This is just a robe that I had that I was like, hey, this is a bright spring, look at that. Okay, but obviously I wouldn't necessarily wear a dress with all these colors. I don't know if that speaks to my style goals. I'm not really changing my style goals, I'm just changing how I use color. And I'm gonna play around with some of the neutrals, and I'm gonna see, like, if I take this outfit, you know, a bright colored shirt, when I move from this to this, isn't necessarily conveying the same thing for me. So keep your eye on my channel, because I'm going to be doing kind of a deep dive on what this means for my style, how I'm going to be pivoting, and how I think a really great way to take new style input that's exciting and that can lift your style up. It doesn't have to be 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I don't view it that way at all. Everything I gained in my summer exploration, I nailed down my other pillars so well that I'm okay that this new input is not rattling those pillars. Now, so this is something I'm working on, and it's good to know, like, how am I going to be using color? Am I gradating color? Do I like color blocking? Do I like monochrome? And how will that work with the colors that I like? Now, the last pillar is details and finishing, and this one can be a bit more expansive, but we just want to kind of get an idea of what is the spectrum. How are we finishing our clothes? How are our accessories working with it? We may have a daytime spectrum and kind of a like more going out spectrum. But when we look at all of our data, we can start to see common themes pop up. And we can see, do we have a spectrum like this, or do we have a spectrum like this? And then from there, start to say, have something to compare it to. This can include prints, this can include textures, this can include hair, jewelry, makeup, and we want to see the range. Like for makeup, I do a pretty minimal everyday makeup, and I also do slightly more glam, but I'm not doing full contour makeup, and I'm not necessarily going completely barefaced. So we're trying to get the spectrum. And for hair, similarly, I like a little bit of balance or volume to my hair, whether it's straight or curly. Too much flatness tends to kind of drag me down. So again, we're trying to find the spectrum. Prints, similar, bigger prints. This is probably a little bit too busy for me in terms of style goals, but I do like that it's in my color palette. But super busy prints tend to be a little bit much on me. Closely defined cluster prints, not great. We're just looking at the relation of all of these four things. So when we look at an outfit and we're like, what is wrong with it? We can compare it against the data. And when an outfit is just feeling off, you're not saying, what could possibly be wrong with this? You're thinking, okay, let me compare it against my pillars. So let's take my robe, for example. It fits my general style line shapes. It has some relaxedness. It has a longer silhouette in terms of shape. We could call it a relaxed inverted triangle shape. And all works for my style. Color. These are my good colors. I know, we're all surprised. Be nice. But these are my colors. Now, here's where I'm pinpointing that it's the details that are off. This pattern, while it's not terrible, it's not quite my style. It's a little bit more graphic and busy than I prefer my prints to be. The scale is good. It's bigger. It's not tightly clustered, but it's a little bit busy for me. So do you see how I took something that is working, let's say 70% of the way, and then I was able to say, okay, here's the problem. So if I was going to replace this, which I'm not, but if I was going to, I would look for all of those pillars in my outfit and all of those pillars in my pieces to be aligned. So it can give you an incredible amount of information very easily. And if you're like, I have no pillars, I have no legs to my chair, that's okay too. But you have to start collecting the style data. So the style data is what we're basing this on. And if I had done the same exercise, 6 months ago when I was like deep in the I have to be a summer version, my chair would look slightly different. We're just proceeding with the input we have until we have something that will make it better. We're always improving our chair, but we're working with what we have. And when you collect that style data, you can move the needle from here to here because you're pinpointing the new input that's helping and that you like. And who's to say an outfit is good, met, or bad? You get to decide. This is best done, not crowdsourced. This should be, what did I feel good in? What did I like the look of? And it can open up the, how do I improve this outfit? And what do I need to kind of let go of? Similarly, you can do this exercise and write down your no's. If you're saying like, I don't really have a lot of outfits I love, start pulling all the outfits you don't like and kind of put them together in the 4 categories. Maybe it's as simple as in the details area, you're putting, I don't tight clustered prints, or I don't like overly sharp, small elements. That would be mine, for instance. And maybe for style lines, I don't like overly round. I can't do the full circle things. They look childish on me. Again, don't worry about if you're getting the technical term right, like is this straight or tubular? Just make sure that it's all connecting in your brain, that you can see the patterns. So I hope this helps. Until next time.